The betrayal that shattered Drew, a story of grief, anger, and revenge ***. In a world where family secrets run deep and loyalties can change with the tide, few things cut deeper than betrayal. For Drew Kane, the death of Monica Quartermaine, the matriarch of the Quartermaine family, marked the end of an era, but it also became the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with bitterness, resentment, and the burning desire for revenge. Drew's relationship with Monica had always been complicated, but no one could have anticipated that her death would drive him down a path he had never imagined. Monica was not just a figurehead in the Quartermaine family, she was a force in Drew's life. From the moment he arrived in Port Charles, Drew had been drawn into the intricate web of the Quartermaine dynasty, his own identity caught between the past he had lost and the legacy he had inherited. Monica, though never without her flaws, had been a constant, an anchor in Drew's tumultuous world. However, Drew's return to the Quartermaine mansion to pay his respects to Monica's memory would prove to be anything but peaceful. ###The fractured beginning. Drew's grief was palpable as he wheeled himself into the familiar corridors of the Quartermaine estate. The air was thick with the weight of loss, the kind of loss that doesn't just leave an emotional scar but also a lingering sense of unfinished business. Drew's presence in the mansion wasn't just symbolic, it was his way of acknowledging the deep bond he had with Monica, a bond that had seen its share of highs and lows. And yet, that bond would be abruptly severed the moment Drew tried to approach his late mother. To his utter shock, Monica, or rather, the echo of her legacy, stopped him before he could even set foot in the room where her body lay. The scene was surreal, a haunting moment where Drew, in his wheelchair, was physically pushed away from the very family that had once claimed him. Monica's absence was felt in every corner of the mansion, but her refusal to allow Drew to pay his respects felt like a slap in the face. It was as though all the years of conflict and unresolved tensions had boiled to a head. No words were exchanged, only the cold, unyielding barrier that had been set between Drew and the Quartermaine legacy. His anger surged, but it was not just the refusal to mourn with his family that stung. It was the fact that Monica, in her final act, had denied him the chance to close a chapter in their fractured relationship. ###The will and the legacy of betrayal. The next blow came when Drew was excluded from Monica's will reading. This wasn't just a procedural oversight, it was a deliberate act that had been set in motion long before her death. Monica's final wishes were a testament to the complex nature of the Quartermaine family and the deep-seated divisions that had festered for years. Drew had already been on the outside looking in, but now, with this blatant exclusion, he was forced to reckon with the painful reality that his place in the family was not just tenuous, it was non-existent. As the will was read, Drew's name was notably absent from the list of beneficiaries. His inheritance had been stripped away, and his connection to the Quartermaine legacy, which had always been tenuous at best, had been severed completely. The family, already rife with its own internal power struggles, seemed to have cast Drew aside with the same cold detachment that had marked his entry into the mansion that fateful day. For Drew, this was the final straw. The exclusion from Monica's will was more than just an affront to his inheritance, it was an assault on his very identity. Drew had always struggled with the question of who he was, torn between his past as a soldier, his life with the Quartermaines, and the man he had tried to become. Monica's rejection felt like the final confirmation that, in the eyes of the family, he was nothing more than an outsider. The family he had once fought for had now turned its back on him. ###The seeds of revenge. The anger that had been building within Drew, simmering beneath the surface, erupted in a wave of rage. It wasn't just the loss of money, power, or status that drove Drew to the brink, it was the sense of betrayal. It was the undeniable feeling that he had been used and discarded. Drew had given so much of himself to the Quartermaine family, only to be pushed aside when his mother died. The injustice was maddening. Revenge became Drew's only solace. It was no longer about the money or the estate, it was about making the Quartermaines pay for the pain they had caused him. Drew's sense of justice, which had always been deeply rooted in his military training, had now been warped into something darker. It was about reclaiming his place in a family that had once been his and making those who had wronged him feel the weight of their actions. But Drew's revenge would not be swift or simple. His plan would require patience, strategy, and an understanding of the complex dynamics that governed the Quartermaine family. He would have to outsmart those who thought they had already won, those who believed that by cutting him out of the will and the family, they had silenced him once and for all. Drew would use every tool at his disposal, manipulating the very system that had cast him aside. The unraveling of the Quartermaines. As Drew's plan began to take shape, the Quartermaines found themselves facing an unexpected and dangerous adversary. Drew was not the same man who had once been swept up in the drama and intrigue of the family. The pain of rejection had forged a new persona in him, one that was cold, calculating, and focused solely on revenge. The stakes were high, and Drew knew that if he was to succeed, he would have to unravel the very fabric of the Quartermaine family. But as Drew worked his way into the heart of the family's deepest secrets, he found that revenge was not as sweet as he had imagined. The further he pushed, the more he realized that the true cost of revenge was the toll it took on his own soul. Drew's actions, though driven by anger and betrayal, began to reveal the cracks in his own identity. Was he willing to sacrifice everything, his relationships, his sanity, his very soul, just to see the Quartermaines suffer? The final confrontation. Drew's quest for revenge would come to a head in a dramatic final confrontation. As he closed in on his targets, the weight of his choices began to crush him. The once innocent desire for justice had morphed into something darker, and Drew's soul was at war with itself. But there was no turning back now. The Quartermaines had pushed him too far, and he would make them pay, no matter the cost. In the final moments, Drew would be forced to confront not only the family who had betrayed him but also the man he had become. The revenge he had sought might bring him victory, but would it be worth the price he had paid? As the Quartermaines crumbled under the weight of Drew's vengeance, the question lingered, was it worth it? Conclusion. Drew Kane's journey from grief to revenge is a tale of loss, betrayal, and the struggle for identity. The family he once fought for had cast him aside, and in his rage, he sought to tear them apart. But in the end, Drew would find that revenge is a double-edged sword, one that can destroy both the target and the seeker. The Quartermaines may have lost their grip on their empire, but Drew lost something far more precious, his sense of self. As the dust settled and the ashes of Drew's revenge lay scattered, the question remained. Could he ever find peace, or had the battle for the Quartermaine legacy forever consumed him? The story of Drew Kane's revenge was not just about the downfall of a family, it was the tale of a man who had lost everything and, in the process, nearly lost himself.